Hey, welcome back to The Dive. Today, we welcome back the president, CFO, and chief market strategist of InTheMoneyStocks.com and VerifiedInvestingCrypto.com, Gareth Soloway. We're excited to hear Gareth's thoughts on what's going on with Twitter, Meta, Apple, oil, crypto, and the precious metals. And he will also reminisce about his best trades of 2022 and let us in on what trade ideas he thinks will outperform in 2023. Hey, Gareth, welcome back to The Dive.
Hey, thanks for having me back. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us again, Gareth. Okay, so let's start off with the tech sector. Elon Musk has asked Twitter users via a poll if he should step down as CEO. The results showed that 57.5% are in favor of him stepping down. Do you think that these polls deserve any comment? And secondly, what are your thoughts on what's going on with Twitter?
Yeah, I think that for the most part, Elon Musk already made up his mind. He wants to step aside, right? I think, to be honest, running Twitter is one of those jobs that there's a no-win situation to it. You know, one side is going to criticize him if he does this. The other side is going to criticize him if he does that. And I think, honestly, it's a lot of work. I think he'd much rather focus on technology, like on Tesla, on SpaceX, and even on Neuralink. So my guess is either way, it's just a matter of time before he steps aside and names someone to take it over. But he loves the dramatics of it, and he loves doing those type of things. So I think for the most part, it's the right move for him to step aside and kind of let someone else deal with the nonsense.
The EU Commission warned Facebook that it is breaching antitrust laws by distorting competition in markets for online classified advertising and abusing its dominant position. How do you view potential regulatory risk when looking at a stock like Meta?
Yeah, so I think with Meta, right, we know that in the past they've run into issues in the U.S. with election stuff and other stuff, and obviously the EU is watching very closely as well. So I do think there's some risk there, but I think going forward, the bigger story will continue to be the metaverse, right? So right now it's very unpopular. I think as they start debuting different things, it's going to start to gain traction. And so I think, to be honest, a lot of this other stuff will become just noise in the background. And I actually think that on buybacks, I'm a buyer of Meta stock at this point. I think that's the way to go.
Apple announced in June of 2020 that it will take around 2 years to make the switch from Intel processors to Mac chips created in-house. Now we're at the tail end of 2022, and it's clear that Apple has missed its self-imposed deadline for completing the shift. It seems like Apple can take shots like this because they have $48 billion on their balance sheet. But where do you see them going from here? What is your outlook on the chart?
Yeah, so the charts, this is the interesting thing about Apple, and I'll share my screen here so we can take a look. But basically, Apple is in the process of a major breakdown. And so what you can see is there's a trend line in red here that starts all the way back in 2020 with multiple hits along the baseline here, all the way to recent times. And if we zoom in, we can see that you actually did break it per Friday's close. It looks like it's trying to confirm today. So for me, this is a big warning sign over the midterm for Apple. If Apple really is breaking here, yes, you'll see bounces, but it's most likely going to continue sharply lower. I actually have a couple price targets. My first price target is around $95 to $96. And then I think we could actually trade as low as close to $80 on Apple, which again, if you think about it logically, if Apple were to go that low, then the whole stock market is going to go much, much lower because of its weighting in the S&P and the NASDAQ 100 and so forth. So to me, this is the stock that you most rely on for the overall market, and it is showing us some major warning signs going into 2023. So investors need to be careful both on Apple as well as on the stock market.
Okay, now shifting gears, the Biden administration is making a plan to replenish the nation's emergency oil reserves, starting with a 3 million barrel purchase of crude. How do you think that this will affect oil prices?
Yeah, so at least in this period where the economy is slowing, global economies are slowing, I don't think it's going to have a major impact on price. One of the things that I have to say, though, is that in terms of a trade, he did the Biden administration, you got to give credit for it on that side. He basically, or the Biden administration said, hey, we're going to sell oil at, north of $100 from the Strategic Reserve. Now they're buying it back at $70 and change. So in terms, if that was a trade that I did, it would actually be a pretty darn good trade. So as long as it doesn't cause a meteoric spike back on north of 100, I think that it's the right move here. You got to get that strategic reserve to fill up again, so that in the case of an emergency, they can utilize it again. But I think, again, for the most part, this is the right move. Even if it puts a floor on oil in the short term, at least they're refilling the strategic reserve.
Okay, now let's move on and talk about crypto. Mazars, the auditing firm working on proof of reserves statements with Binance, KuCoin, and Crypto.com, has paused all work due to concerns regarding the way that the reports are understood by the public. Given all the events, how do serious investors play in the crypto world without real transparency?
And I think that's the biggest question here, is that without transparency, you can't devote a significant amount, or at least you shouldn't devote a significant amount of your money to any crypto project or even crypto in general. And that's kind of where I am. And I think if you asked a lot of the big money institutions or institutional investors, they're in the same position. There's no transparency. Even the auditing was suspect because there's not a lot of regulation in the space. So what's considered this, what's considered that? And it just makes for a very tricky environment. So I think, honestly, until we get some regulation in crypto, there's not going to be a lot of big money deploying itself in the crypto sphere. And I think that's one of the major things. When you're asking me where could crypto bottom or when could it bottom, the answer is when we get transparency due to major regulation. And we all hope that they don't overregulate. I mean, no one wants overregulation, but you have to be able to know what's happening to your money when you invest it. You know, is it being used for leverage? Is it vanishing to be used for plane trips around the world by the CEO? All of these type of things just create the uncertainty, and honestly, it hurts crypto as a whole. I mean, there's just so much mistrust in crypto. So I think for the most part, Bitcoin bottoms when we get regulation. I think by May, June of this year of 2023, I should say, is a likely bottom. I still think there's more downside to go before it bottoms, but it's getting close at least.
Changing gears here, for our audience that are very interested in precious metals, what is your view on silver? What is holding the metal back at this point?
Yeah, so silver actually looks very good to me, but it is into significant resistance. Let's take a look at the chart real quick here and see what it shows us. So one of the things that we can see is that silver is behaving in its normal way, meaning that from the 2020 lows, it had this big bounce up to about the $30 level, at which point it slowly went sideways to lower in the last couple of years since that high. Now, that's known as a bullish inside bar pattern or an in spirit of a bull flag. One of the interesting things is recently we've rallied up, but notice these levels of resistance. There's a ton of resistance between $26 and $24 per ounce. For me, that is your stopping point right now until we break above it. So after this big run on silver, I think you consolidate for a little while. You make a bull flag, you pull back a little bit, and then make an attempt to break out. If we get north of $26 a barrel, I think the next bull run in silver can start. And you could be looking at seeing, 2011, 2010 highs, which I think were around $50 per ounce. That could be achieved, I don't think in 2023, but maybe in 2024. So I do think there's a big metals bull market coming. I think that the fact is you see so many kind of haters in the metal industry, but that's exactly when you want to be buying it. When everyone else hates it, start looking at it, because that's usually the beginning of the next bull run.
Now, a fun question that we like to ask every year. What is your gold price prediction for 2023?
So gold prices, and this is going to be tricky. So the gold price, it's doing fine. It's held up beautifully in spite of a really strong dollar. It's basically unchanged for the year, considering the dollar's up about 15% on the year. I think that gold has its next beginning bull market run in 2023. I do think it takes out the 2070 highs on per ounce gold. And my guess is we'll be at 2,300 or higher by year end. So I'll go with 2,300.
Okay, so looking back on 2022, what was your best trade, Gareth?
Oh, wow. Well, I think the Bitcoin short was the best one, right? So just at the end, I mean, that was really in 2021, October, November, but, to see it fulfill within 1 year, the price target of getting down to 20,000 or below, I think that was an awesome one. Another one that I think was really good was the oil call. When oil was at 120 to 130, I was the unpopular person on the bench, basically saying, hey guys, it's topping here, when everyone else was saying, hey, it's going to $150 to $200 a barrel. And the charts didn't tell us that. They said the opposite. They said it was going to go down, and now we sit in the $70 range. So I think those were really the highlights of the year, but in between there was awesome trading. I will say this, that in bear markets and in volatility, swing traders, which is what I do, I buy and sell in a week or two or a month or two. That's been the best price action I've had in a long time.
Do you have a top trade idea for 2023?
So I think gold, top trade would be gold. And I think if Bitcoin gets down to about $9,000, which is around my target price, I think that would be a fantastic trade. I think you could be back to 20,000 by the end of 2023. So that gives you potential upside of 100% if it gets down there. So those would be kind of top plays. Aside from that, I think you have to just kind of be careful in this environment, be much shorter term, sell the rips. Remember, we're in a bear market, so you want to you don't want to get bullish for the long term. Just play the bounces as they come and just make money that way.
Okay, great. Well, that's all we have for you today, Gareth. Thank you so much for joining us so many times this year, and I hope you have a great holidays, and hopefully we see you again in the new year.
Absolutely. Happy holidays, and thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for watching today. We'll be back again tomorrow with another great interview, so stay tuned by hitting that notification bell and subscribing below before you leave us. Bye.